The blackjack dealer's hands moved like a magician's, cards sliding across green felt with practiced precision. I sat at the table, not playing, just watching other people lose money while I nursed my third vodka tonic. The Bellagio's casino floor hummed with desperate energy at 3 a.m, full of people chasing something they'd never catch. I fit right in. My phone buzzed against the table. Timothy's name flashed on the screen for the 19th time tonight. I let it go to voicemail again. What was the point of answering? He'd made himself perfectly clear 2 months ago when he found out what I'd done. When he'd looked at me with those green eyes that used to light up whenever I walked into a room and said, "We're done, Kelly. Don't contact me again." The woman next to me hit on 17 and busted. Amateur. You never hit on 17. You stand and hope the dealer busts instead. But people make stupid choices when they're desperate. I should know. I'd thrown away 8 years with the only man who ever truly loved me because I wanted to see if the grass was greener. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. It was brown and dead and full of thorns. "You playing or just taking up space?" the dealer asked, his voice cutting through my self-pity spiral. "Just watching," I said, sliding off the stool. My designer heels, the ones Timothy bought me for my birthday last year, clicked against the marble as I walked toward the elevator. Everything I owned reminded me of him. The dress I wore tonight? He'd picked it out, said the blue made my eyes pop. The necklace around my throat? Anniversary gift. Even my perfume was the one he loved, the one that made him bury his face in my neck and breathe deep. The elevator ride to my suite took forever, 52 floors of regret climbing up my throat. I'd been living at the Bellagio for 2 weeks now, burning through my savings because I couldn't stand being in our apartment. I couldn't afford it. I knew that. But staying in that hotel felt easier than facing the bed he'd left behind. Everything there screamed Timothy. His guitar in the corner, his coffee mug on the kitchen counter, the indent on his side of the bed that I couldn't bring myself to sleep on. I kicked off my heels the second I got inside my room, the strip lights glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows, like a million broken promises. This view cost $400 a night. Timothy would have said it was wasteful. He'd have been right. He was always right about the practical things, the real things. I was the one who chased fantasies. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Timothy. It was Ryan, the mistake that cost me everything. "You up? Could come by." I stared at the text, rage building in my chest. This pathetic excuse for a man thought he could still have access to me? After he'd gotten what he wanted and disappeared the moment things got complicated? "Go to hell," I typed back, then blocked his number. Should have done that 2 months ago. Should have done a lot of things differently 2 months ago. I poured myself another drink from the minibar, $30 vodka that tasted like regret, and opened my Photos app. Mistake number 1000 for the night. Timothy's face smiled back at me from 100 different moments. Us at Lake Mead last summer, his arms wrapped around me as the sun set. Him playing guitar at an open mic night, looking at me in the crowd like I was the only person there. Our trip to San Francisco, where he'd gotten down on one knee at Fisherman's Wharf. I'd said yes, of course. Had cried happy tears while tourists applauded. We'd planned a spring wedding, nothing fancy, just family and close friends. His mom had already started calling me her daughter. My dad had welcomed him like the son he'd never had. All gone now. The ring sat in my jewelry box back at the apartment, probably worth enough to cover another month in this hotel. But I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Couldn't bring myself to do much of anything except drink and remember and hate myself. The worst part was how it happened. How monumentally stupid I'd been. 8 years together since we were 16 and awkward and trying to figure out who we were. He'd been this skinny kid with too much hair and a guitar he could barely play. I'd been the new girl, fresh from Tucson, trying to navigate Las Vegas high school politics. He'd found me crying behind the gym after some mean girls incident I can't even remember now. Didn't say anything, just sat down next to me and started playing this terrible version of Wonderwall until I laughed. We'd been inseparable after that, 8 years. Through high school graduation, through college applications, through my parents' divorce and his dad's cancer scare, through minimum wage jobs and tiny apartments and ramen dinners, through my quarter-life crisis at 22 when I thought I should be further along in life, through his music dreams that never quite took off but never quite died either. He'd loved me through all of it. Not just loved me, adored me, cherished me, looked at me like I'd hung the stars in the sky just for him. Even after 8 years, he still got this dopey smile when I'd walk into a room, still held my hand in public, still sang to me when I was sad, still brought me flowers every Friday because he knew carnations were my favorite, even though everyone else thought they were cheap. And what did I do with this perfect love? I threw it away for Ryan fucking Castellano. Ryan was everything Timothy wasn't. Aggressive where Timothy was gentle, flashy where Timothy was understated. He drove a Mercedes and wore Armani suits and worked as a pit boss at the Wynn. He'd noticed me during a girls' night out, sent over expensive champagne, charmed his way into our group. I should have shut it down immediately. Should have flashed my engagement ring and walked away. But there was something intoxicating about the attention. The way he looked at me like I was prey. After years of Timothy's steady, safe love, Ryan's danger felt like electricity. "You're too young to be tied down," he'd whispered in my ear that first night, his breath hot against my skin. "When's the last time you felt really alive?" I'd gone home to Timothy that night, crawled into bed beside him, and felt like the worst person in the world. He'd pulled me close in his sleep, murmured, "Love you," into my hair. I'd lain awake thinking about Ryan's words. Was I too young? Was I missing out on something? The thoughts grew like cancer. Every time Timothy did something sweet, made me breakfast, wrote me a song, planned a romantic date, I wondered what else was out there. What experiences I was missing by settling down so young. My engaged friends seemed so sophisticated, talking about their wild dating stories, their one-night stands, their complicated situationships. What did I have? The same boy I'd been with since I was 16. Except he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man who paid bills on time and saved for our future and talked about kids' names. A man who knew exactly how I liked my coffee and never forgot my mother's birthday and always had my back. A man who'd grown up beside me, shaped by the same experiences, building a life brick by careful brick. But Ryan was excitement. Ryan was the unknown. Ryan was the path not taken. I started texting him, just friendly at first, then flirty, then explicit. Timothy never checked my phone. He trusted me completely. Why wouldn't he? I'd never given him a reason not to. The actual cheating happened on a Thursday. Timothy was playing a gig at a coffee shop downtown, a regular spot where they paid him $50 and free drinks to play acoustic sets. I'd told him I had to work late. Instead, I met Ryan at a hotel off the Strip, one of those places that rented rooms by the hour. It was awful. Not the sex. That was fine, I guess. Mechanical. Athletic, but empty. But the moment it was over, the moment Ryan rolled off me and checked his phone, I knew I'd made the worst mistake of my life. This wasn't passion. This wasn't adventure. This was just bodies slapping together in a room that smelled like disinfectant and other people's shame. "I should go," Ryan said, already pulling on his clothes. "Gotta get back to work." "That's it?" I asked, pulling the scratchy sheet up to cover myself. He shrugged. "What did you expect? You knew what this was?" I did know. That was the worst part. I'd known exactly what I was doing and done it anyway. I went home and threw up. Timothy was already asleep, his guitar case propped by the door, a note on the counter. "Killed it tonight, babe." "Guy wants to book me for a wedding. Love you." I should have told him right then. Should have woken him up and confessed and begged for forgiveness. Instead, I showered Ryan's cologne off my skin and crawled into bed, letting Timothy pull me close like nothing had happened. The guilt ate me alive. Every time Timothy smiled at me, every time he said he loved me, every time he talked about our future, I wanted to scream. I started picking fights over nothing, criticizing his music, complaining about money, anything to make him the bad guy, to justify what I'd done. "What's wrong, Kel?" he'd asked one night after I'd snapped at him for leaving dishes in the sink. "You've been so angry lately. Did I do something?" Yes, I wanted to say, "You loved me too much. You made me feel safe. You never gave me a reason to doubt us, and somehow that became the problem." "I'm just stressed," I lied. He'd wrapped his arms around me, kissed the top of my head. "Whatever it is, we'll get through it together. That's what we do, right? You and me against the world." I lasted 3 days before I cracked. We were at his parents' house for Sunday dinner. His mom had made my favorite, chicken parmesan, and his dad was telling stories about Timothy as a kid, how he'd always been such a good boy, never gave them any trouble. His sister was showing me Pinterest boards for wedding ideas. Everyone was so happy, so excited about our future, so sure Timothy had found his soulmate. I excused myself to the bathroom and had a panic attack. Full-blown, can't breathe, might die panic attack. Because I'd ruined everything. This beautiful family that had welcomed me, this perfect man who loved me, this future we'd planned. I'd destroyed it all for 45 minutes in a cheap hotel with a man who couldn't even remember my middle name. I came back to the table and blurted it out, right there over his mother's chicken parmesan. "I slept with someone else." The silence was deafening. His dad's fork clattered to his plate. His sister gasped. His mother's hand went to her mouth. And Timothy just stared at me like I'd spoken in tongues. "What?" he said finally, his voice so quiet I could barely hear it. "I'm sorry," I said, the words tumbling out. "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. I love you so much, please." He stood up slowly, like an old man, placed his napkin carefully on the table. "We should go," he said, not angry, just broken. The drive home was silent. I cried. He didn't, just drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. When we got to the apartment, he went straight to the bedroom and started packing. Not frantically, methodically, folding each shirt, rolling each pair of socks. "Timothy, please," I begged, following him around. "Let me explain. It was just once. I was confused. I thought I was missing out on something, but I wasn't. You're everything. You're all I want." He paused, holding one of his t-shirts, the one I always stole to sleep in. "How long?" "What? How long have you been seeing him?" "I haven't been seeing him. It was just once, Thursday night when you had the gig." He nodded slowly, folded the shirt, placed it in his suitcase. 3 days. That's how long you let me love you without knowing." "I wanted to tell you." "At my parents' house?" He finally looked at me and I wished he hadn't. His eyes were red, confused, hurt beyond measure. "You told me at my parents' house, in front of my family, at Sunday dinner." "I'm sorry, I couldn't keep it in anymore." "Who was it?" "Does it matter?" "Who was it, Kelly?" "Some guy named Ryan, a pit boss. I met him on girls' night. It meant nothing." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nothing. 8 years, and you threw it away for nothing." "I didn't throw it away. We can work through this. People work through this all the time. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes." He zipped up his suitcase. "No." "Timothy, please." "No, Kelly. I'm done. I'm worth more than this." "I know you are. That's why I'm so sorry. You're perfect. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." "If that were true, you wouldn't have fucked another man." The profanity shocked me. Timothy never cursed, never raised his voice, never lost control. But there it was, proof that I'd broken something fundamental in the gentlest man I'd ever known. He picked up his suitcase, his guitar case. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later. Please don't be here when I do." Where are you going? That's not your concern anymore. Timothy, I love you. He paused at the door, didn't turn around. I loved you too, Kelly, more than anything. I would have died for you, and you knew that. You knew that, and you did it anyway. Then he left. Just walked out and left me standing in our apartment, surrounded by the life we'd built together. I thought he'd come back. Thought he'd cool down, realize 8 years was worth fighting for. I texted him apologies, explanations, promises, called until he blocked my number. Showed up at his parents' house until his dad threatened to call the police. Went to the coffee shop where he played until the manager banned me. Nothing worked. Timothy was done. Really, truly done. I found out through social media that he'd moved in with his cousin across town, that he'd thrown himself into his music, playing every open mic and wedding gig he could find, that he'd cut his hair, started working out, bought new clothes, that he was moving on without me. Meanwhile, I was falling apart. I called in sick to work so many times they fired me. I drank too much. I texted Ryan, thinking maybe if the affair turned into something real, it would justify what I'd done. He responded once, "You were fun, but I don't do drama. Good luck." My friends tried to help at first, told me everyone makes mistakes, that Timothy would forgive me eventually, that if he really loved me, he'd fight for us. But as weeks turned into months and Timothy remained resolute, they got tired of my wallowing, stopped inviting me out, stopped answering my calls. "You need to move on," my best friend Stephanie finally said. "You made your choice. Now live with it." But I couldn't move on. Couldn't accept that one stupid decision had cost me everything. I'd been with Timothy since I was 16. He was woven into the fabric of my life. Every memory, every milestone, every plan for the future included him. How was I supposed to just start over? So I didn't. I holed up in our apartment, my apartment now, and tortured myself with what-ifs. What if I'd never talked to Ryan? What if I'd gone to Timothy's gig instead? What if I'd confessed right away? What if I'd kept my mouth shut forever? The engagement ring taunted me from the dresser. Such a modest thing compared to what some of my friends had. Just a simple solitaire that Timothy had saved for months to afford. He'd been so nervous when he proposed, had practiced his speech so many times I could see him mentally running through it as he knelt. "Kelly Marie Donovan," he'd said, his voice shaking. "I've loved you since the day I met you crying behind the gym. You're my best friend, my favorite person, my whole heart. I don't have much to offer except my music and my love, but both are yours forever if you'll have me. Will you marry me?" I'd said yes before he even finished, launching myself at him, both of us crying and laughing. It had been perfect. He had been perfect. And I'd ruined it because I thought I deserved more. Because I thought his quiet, steady love wasn't enough. Because I confused contentment with boredom, safety with settling. 2 months. It had been 2 months since he walked out, and I was no closer to accepting it. That's why I was living in this overpriced hotel, drinking overpriced liquor, avoiding the apartment that echoed with his absence. That's why I was calling him 19 times a night, leaving voicemails I knew he'd delete without listening. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but maybe it was Timothy calling from a different phone. Maybe he'd finally decided to talk to me. "Kelly?" A woman's voice, familiar but not immediately placeable. "Yes?" "It's Diana, Timothy's mom." My heart stopped. "Is he okay? Did something happen?" A pause. "He's fine. I'm calling to ask you to stop." "Stop what?" "Stop calling. Stop texting. Stop showing up at the coffee shop. Stop trying to contact him through his friends. Just stop." Tears burned my eyes. "I can't. I love him." "If you love him, you'll let him heal. You'll let him move on." "Mrs. Morrison, please. I made one mistake. One terrible, awful mistake, but 8 years. Kelly, honey, I need you to listen to me. I loved you like a daughter. We all did. But you broke my son's heart. You broke it in a way that can't be fixed with apologies or time or grand gestures. He's finally starting to put himself back together. Please don't undo that. Is he seeing someone? Another pause, longer this time. That's not your business anymore. He was. I could hear it in her voice. My Timothy, who'd only ever been with me, who'd only ever wanted me, was with someone else. Someone who wouldn't betray him, someone who'd appreciate what I'd thrown away. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know you are. But sometimes sorry isn't enough. Take care of yourself, Kelly. But please do it away from my son. She hung up, leaving me alone with the truth I'd been avoiding for 2 months. It was over. Really, truly, permanently over. Timothy had moved on. I was the only one still stuck in the wreckage of what we'd had. After that call, something shifted. I didn't drink for a week. Didn't cry. Just sat in the wreckage and finally accepted what I'd done. I threw my phone across the room, watched it shatter against the wall. Good. Now I couldn't call him anymore. Couldn't torture myself checking his social media, looking for clues about his new life. The minibar was empty. I'd drunk everything, even the champagne I didn't like. Room service was closed. The casino bar was open, but that meant putting on shoes, fixing my face, pretending to be human. Instead, I ran a bath in the ridiculous marble tub, water hot enough to burn. Sank into it still wearing my dress, the fabric billowing around me like I was drowning in silk. This was what I'd wanted, right? Drama, excitement, something more than Timothy's quiet love and predictable days. Well, I'd gotten it. Here I was in a fancy hotel, drunk and alone, wearing a designer dress in a bathtub, living out some movie scene idea of heartbreak. Was this better than Sunday dinners with his family? Better than falling asleep to his guitar practice? Better than knowing exactly what my life would look like in 5, 10, 20 years? The answer was so obvious it was laughable. No, none of this was better. This was empty and performative and pathetic. Just like that night with Ryan had been. Just like every moment since Timothy walked out had been. I'd had everything. A man who adored me, a future mapped out with love, a family that welcomed me, friends who included us, a small but happy life filled with music and laughter and the kind of love people write songs about. And I'd thrown it all away because I thought I was missing something, because I thought passion meant drama, because I thought safety meant settling. The water grew cold, my dress was ruined, my phone was broken, my savings were dwindling, my job was gone, my friends had given up. Timothy's family had cut me off, and Timothy himself had moved on to someone who'd never take his love for granted. I hauled myself out of the tub, stripped off the soaking dress, wrapped myself in the hotel's plush robe, caught sight of myself in the mirror and almost laughed. I looked like a drowned rat. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, hair plastered to my head, eyes red and swollen. This was what I'd reduced myself to. This was the exciting life I'd chosen. I thought about Timothy's new girlfriend. Did she appreciate how he hummed while he cooked? Did she know he was afraid of spiders but would catch them in cups to release outside because he didn't believe in killing things? Did she understand that when he got quiet, he was composing songs in his head? Did she love his morning voice, rough with sleep? Did she trace the scar on his knee from when he'd crashed his bike at 10? Did she know she had everything I'd ever wanted? Everything I'd thrown away? The hotel room felt like a prison. $400 a night to avoid facing the apartment Timothy and I had shared. But I couldn't hide forever. My credit cards were maxed, my bank account was draining. Soon I'd have to go back, pack up the remnants of our life, figure out how to exist in a world where Timothy Morrison didn't love me anymore. Because he didn't. That was the truth I'd been avoiding. He didn't love me anymore. I'd killed that love, murdered it in a cheap hotel room with a man whose last name I'd had to think about to remember. I ordered a new phone the next morning. When it arrived, I didn't download his number, didn't reinstall social media, didn't give myself the temptation. Diana was right. If I loved him, and God I did, more than I'd ever realized. I had to let him go, had to let him heal, had to let him find happiness with someone who'd never betray him. I moved back to the apartment, boxed up his things he'd left behind, a few shirts, some books, the coffee mug he always used, mailed them to his cousin's address without a note, took down our photos, packed them away. Not thrown out, I wasn't strong enough for that, but hidden where they couldn't ambush me with memories. I got a new job. Bartending at a casino, ironic considering that's where this all started. The hours were terrible and the customers were worse, but it kept me busy, kept me from thinking too much, kept me exhausted enough to sleep without dreaming of Timothy. I heard through the remnants of our social circle that he was doing well. His music career was taking off. He'd been hired to play at some high-profile events. He was happy. He was also engaged. Almost a year after he left, I found out by accident serving drinks to a group of women celebrating a bachelorette party. One of them knew his sister, had seen the announcement on social media. "Such a beautiful couple," she gushed, not knowing who I was. "He's this amazing musician and she's a teacher. They're perfect together. Getting married next spring."
Spring, when we were supposed to get married.
I smiled, poured their shots, wished them a fun night, made it through my shift without breaking down. But sitting in my car afterward, I finally let myself grieve. Not dramatic, look-at-me grief like I'd wallowed in at the hotel. Real grief. Quiet and deep and accepting. I'd lost him. I'd lost the best thing that ever happened to me because I'd confused love with excitement, partnership with boredom, devotion with settling. I'd had a man who sang to me and brought me flowers and looked at me like I was his whole world, and I'd destroyed him for a fantasy that had lasted less than an hour. There was no going back, no fixing it, no second chances. Timothy had moved on, found someone who saw his worth, who'd never risk losing him for anything. He'd have the spring wedding, the house, the kids, the life we'd planned, just with someone else, someone better, someone who deserved him. And me, I'd have this, a bartending job, an apartment full of ghosts, a jewelry box I'd left untouched since returning from the Bellagio, holding a ring I couldn't sell, friends who'd learned not to mention his name, a future I couldn't picture because I'd only ever imagined it with him in it. But mostly, I'd have the knowledge that I'd held perfection in my hands and crushed it, that I'd been loved completely and thrown it away, that I'd had everything and chosen nothing. The parking lot was empty except for my car and the cleaning crew's van. The neon lights of the casino blinked against the dawn sky. Somewhere in this city, Timothy was probably waking up next to his fiancée, maybe making her coffee exactly how she liked it, maybe humming while he cooked breakfast, maybe looking at her the way he used to look at me. I started my car, drove home to my empty apartment. Tomorrow I'd wake up and go to work and pretend to be okay. I'd serve drinks to happy couples and bite my tongue. I'd come home to silence and microwave dinners and the echo of what could have been. This was my life now, the life I'd chosen when I'd decided Timothy's love wasn't enough, when I'd decided I was missing something, when I'd decided to throw away 8 years for a stranger's touch. Turns out, I had been missing something. I'd been missing the ability to recognize perfection when it was mine. I'd been missing the wisdom to value love over lust, partnership over passion, forever over right now. By the time I found those missing pieces, it was too late. Timothy was gone. Our life was gone. Everything was gone except the lesson learned too late. Sometimes what you have is exactly what you need. Sometimes safe is another word for home. Sometimes boring is another word for peace. Sometimes you don't know what you've got until he's walking down the aisle towards somebody else. I poured myself a glass of water. I'd stopped drinking months ago, tired of numbing pain that needed to be felt, and stood at the window watching the sun rise over Las Vegas. The city of chances, where people came to risk everything on a roll of the dice. I'd rolled mine and lost. Lost everything that mattered for the momentary thrill of something that didn't. And now I had to live with it. Had to wake up every day knowing I'd had true love and thrown it away. Had to accept that Timothy was someone else's happiness now. Had to forgive myself somehow, even though I knew I'd never really forget. 8 years down the drain because I thought I was missing something. Turns out the only thing I'd been missing was the sense to know when I had it all. But that's the thing about lessons learned too late. They're still lessons. And maybe, somehow, someday I'd find a way to build something from these ashes. Not with Timothy. That door was closed forever. But something. A life. A future. A chance to be better than the girl who'd cheated on the only man who'd ever truly loved her. For now, though, I had this. Dawn over Vegas. An empty apartment. A shattered past. An uncertain future. And the hardest truth of all, I'd had perfect love, and I'd thrown it away for nothing. And Timothy? Timothy had moved on, found better, built the life we'd dreamed of with someone who'd never take him for granted. Good for him. He deserved that. He deserved everything. Even if it killed me to know I'd never be the one to give it to him.